All right, we're at 5.7, which is the last section in this chapter. So this may seem complicated, but what you're going to learn in this section will really help you simplify complicated problems. And we're going to be going back and using the LCD to solve equations and inequalities. And the way we're going to do this is we're going to clear the fractions. So our goal is we're going to get rid of all of these fractions so then we can solve it more easily, just like we're used to. So, for example, the way we do this is you multiply each side by the LCD of all the fractions in it. So I already found the LCD for 11, 15, and 25, and it's 150. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply both sides by that 150. And this is like using the distributive property. The 150 goes both with the 9/11 x and the minus 11/15. So we can go ahead and distribute that using the distributive property and then simplify. So in this case, it's going to clear, as long as you pick the right LCD, it will clear the fraction, so it will come out to be a whole number. So 150 times 9 divided by 11 is 135. 150 times 11 divided by 15 is 110, and so on, negative 72. Then you know how to solve this type of problem. We just add 110 to each side, and then divide by 135 to get x alone. And then we end with x equals 38 over 135. And if it simplifies, then you can simplify it. But if it's in simplest form, then you're all done. So in this case, 38 over 135 is as simple as it gets. Can't simplify it anymore. So that was the first method. The other one is we can solve an equation by clearing decimals. So if you have the equation 4.263 equals 2 minus 0.31x. Wow. I don't like decimals because I always mix them up. So in this case, what we can do is you count the number of decimals. So here, the one that has the most decimals is the 4.263. Because it has 3 decimal places, we're going to multiply each side of the equation by 10 to the third, or in other words, 1,000. So essentially, we're going to be moving that decimal place over. So if we say 1,000 times both sides, again, we're using the distributive property, we're going to get 4,263 equals 2,000 minus 310x. There's no more decimals left in this problem. We don't have to worry about them anymore. And since we did the same thing to both sides, they're equivalent. So we can subtract 200 from both sides, and then we're left with negative 310x, divide negative and 310 on each side, and then we end up with x equals negative 7.3. And it should be a decimal. These were decimals up here. So we've simplified it by clearing those decimals. So what I'd like you to do is try 2 problems. The first one, clear the fraction by finding the LCD of 30, 20, and 12. And the second one, clear the decimals by multiplying by, in this case, it would only be 100 because the most you have is 2 decimals. Go ahead and press pause now and give those a try. So, example 3. This is solving an inequality that has fractions. So, you have 5 cups of raisins. You need 3/4 cup of raisins to make 1 loaf of bread, and 1 cup of raisins to make 1 dozen oatmeal raisin cookies. You want to make 2 dozen of those oatmeal cookies because they are delicious. How many loaves of raisin bread can you make? Well, in this case, we need the cups of raisin breads per dozen cookies times the number of dozen cookies that you want. So here, you need 1 cup, and we want 2 dozen cookies. Plus the cups of raisins per loaf we need is 3/4 times the number of loaves of bread. Well, that's what we're trying to figure out, so that's our x, is less than or equal to the cups of raisins you have. Well, we have 5 cups. So we can go ahead and plug that in, just as I did there, but in a nice equation. And then 1 times 2 is 2. We can then subtract the 2 from both sides. which gives us 3, and then multiply by the inverse of 3/4, or the reciprocal, to cancel those out. So you end up getting n is less than or equal to 4. So you can make 4 or less loaves and still have enough raisins for it. The last example is solving an inequality by clearing fractions. So just like before, we just, instead of an equal sign, now we have a greater than or less than sign. So it still uses the same steps. So we find the LCD of 10, 12, and 9, which is 180. We multiply each side, so the LCD equals 180, which you should know how to find from Chapter 4. We multiply each side by 180, and then it's going to clear those fractions for us. So we're left with negative 126x plus 75 is less than 40. We can then go ahead and subtract 75 from both sides, and then divide by negative 126, and end up getting x is less than 5/18. Take your time going through these steps. I kind of rushed through them, but you should be able to follow along and figure out each step. And I've also written it out here. So we end up with a fraction in the end, which we should, because it's all fractions up here most likely, but we cleared those fractions to make it a much easier problem to solve, and we didn't need to worry about changing the fractions to be like fractions. It's just a whole lot easier doing it this way. So go ahead and try 3/7 x plus 2 is less than 12. And that's all for this lesson. While it was a short lesson, you should really take your time taking notes on this, because this is complicated, but it's a really good way for me to assess you, because you need to remember so many things from previous lessons in order to complete these problems.